Mr. Carlyle lived in a glass house that rose above the city like a clear answer to every wish he'd ever made. People said money softened life but clayed the heart, and sometimes that felt true here, in the hush of high-ceiling rooms and the quiet of views that ended at the skyline. He had amassed fortunes, built hotels and factories and algorithms, and yet there were corners of him that had never been softened by the very wealth he distributed. Ethan was his son, a boy with quick eyes and slow limbs, who had been born with a spinal condition that made the world a series of careful maneuvers. The house hummed with orders and staff and schedules, with the small wars of running a household that tried to look like nothing was ever wrong. Anna had come to the house for work, not for pity, and not for the complicated sympathy that sometimes swept the wealthy when they encountered difficulty. She was not like the pictures of maids in magazines. She had hands that were precise and unsentimental, and a laugh that could turn the corners of a room toward light. At first she cleaned and cooked and learned the layout of places where people left their unattended lives. Desk drawers, half-read books, the empty wineglass at the back of a party. Ethan and Anna met like two people learning a machine they had not been given instructions for. She learned how to fold his limbs into comfort, and he learned how to trust a presence that would not leave. Mr. Carlyle watched from a distance. He had not expected to notice, and when he did not know what to call the stirring that followed. There were rules in that house, invisible as the dust motes that the sun made visible when it found a certain window. Staff came and went, whispers traveled in the pantry, and there were people who kept a ledger of appearances more than a ledger of truth. Mr. Carlyle's sister warned him about closeness, saying that servants blurred proprieties, that affection could smell like scheme. At dinner, he noticed the way Anna would shift Ethan's pillow, smooth a blanket with the habit of someone painting gently over a mistake. Some members of staff rolled their eyes and told small stories about Anna's past, about the neighborhood she came from, about the small rumors that made a life strangely less human. Anna's days were a series of attentions: the angle of light in Ethan's window, the way the medication tasted in his mouth, the quiet that calmed him when strangers made rooms loud. There came a night when a storm hit the city and the power stuttered, and with it the machines that kept Ethan comfortable alarmed and chirped. Anna moved like someone who had been rehearsing for emergencies all her life, but who still felt the sharp intake of breath that precedes a plunge. She carried Ethan to the generator room, wrapped his legs, checked the connections, whispered to him like a lullaby while rain clattered on the panes. Someone saw them, a junior manager who had come to check the house's insurance paperwork, and the image lodged in a format of gossip that traveled fast in such households. Mr. Carlyle had been angry for weeks about rumors of mismanagement, petty thefts, and oversharing about the family's private affairs. He traced the rumor to an email thread and then to a staffroom conversation and then to small receipts that were missing. That morning he rose early and walked the halls like a man who could fix things by moving through them with sharpness. He found Anna in the nursery on her knees beside Ethan, hands moving as if they could stitch time back together. She looked up when he cleared his throat, and for a second the room filled with a stillness only a private moment can hold. He was not gentle with his words. Money had taught him to be blunt, and bluntness had become a coat he wore in public. He asked what she was doing in a tone that could have been accusation or curiosity. Anna answered plainly, saying only, "I couldn't leave him while he was scared," while the machines did that clicking. He saw the marks on her arms from where she'd been carrying him, the smear of grease from the generator, the damp of rain. He felt something that was not part of his usual tallying of losses and gains, an unfamiliar burning in the place behind his ribs. The staff who believed their positions required allegiance to rumor watched from the doorway, certain they were witnessing the moment of reckoning. Mr. Carlyle told Anna to step back, to leave the house if necessary, and there was a dozen ways his sentence could break her life. Anna's eyes steadied. She had enough to know how to survive, and enough to know how to love without expecting return. She said, "I won't leave him alone, not when he needs someone," and she folded Ethan's blanket so tenderly the millionaire felt a sting. The weeks that followed were a study in small cruelties disguised as prudence. Mr. Carlyle arranged meetings with his lawyer and questioned invoices and memos. He listened to staff testimonies that were precise in their pettiness. Yet he found himself returning to the image of Anna at Ethan's side like a repeated dream he could not ignore. There were nights when he sat in his office and watched the house via cameras he had installed for safety, and the footage taught him inconvenient truths. He saw Anna wipe Ethan's face with the gentlest touch he had ever seen someone show in his house. She read to him not from the expensive children's books but from dog-eared paperbacks she brought from home, and Ethan's face would shift from listlessness to a small alertness. Mr. Carlyle found a note in the laundry room, left by someone who admired Anna's patience, a simple thank you for staying, in messy handwriting. The more he learned, the less his anger fit the shape of the evidence. It turned instead into a complicated custody of concern. He began to test himself with questions. Was he protecting his son or protecting his empire? Was fear of scandal the same thing as love? Anna's past arrived in fragments. She had been a nurse's assistant in a neighborhood hospital, and she had taken care of her younger sister after their mother left. Those pieces made sense of her competence and her relentless habit of looking out for others. In the background, Mrs. Carlyle hosted luncheons where the city's social order discussed the ways of people like Anna, and their conversation could curdle into cruelty. Mr. Carlyle felt pressure from all sides, to keep the family image unsullied, to listen to his business advisors, to act as a father and as a magnate. He tried to keep his distance, believing that overseeing would be the same as loving, but the house resisted that logic. He thought about his childhood, about the small worked hands of his father and the cardboard models of factories they used to make together, and he recognized how little of that past he had allowed to remain in his adult life. There were rules in that house, invisible as the dust motes that the sun made visible when it found a certain window. Staff came and went, whispers traveled in the pantry, and there were people who kept a ledger of appearances more than a ledger of truth. Mr. Carlyle's sister warned him about closeness, saying that servants blurred proprieties, that affection could smell like scheme. At dinner, he noticed the way Anna would shift Ethan's pillow, smooth a blanket with the habit of someone painting gently over a mistake. Some members of staff rolled their eyes and told small stories about Anna's past, about the neighborhood she came from, about the small rumors that made a life strangely less human. Anna's days were a series of attentions: the angle of light in Ethan's window, the way the medication tasted in his mouth, the quiet that calmed him when strangers made rooms loud. There came a night when a storm hit the city and the power stuttered, and with it the machines that kept Ethan comfortable alarmed and chirped. Anna moved like someone who had been rehearsing for emergencies all her life, but who still felt the sharp intake of breath that precedes a plunge. She carried Ethan to the generator room, wrapped his legs, checked the connections, whispered to him like a lullaby while rain clattered on the panes. Someone saw them, a junior manager who had come to check the house's insurance paperwork, and the image lodged in a format of gossip that traveled fast in such households. Mr. Carlyle's days expanded into hours of observation and small acts of care that felt awkward at first and natural later. He found himself reading the same children's book the boy loved until the lines became memorized in his mouth. Anna watched him do this with a look that was not pity but a measured amusement, and it made him braver. His sister suggested caution and his lawyers whispered about boundaries, but his conscience had started speaking in terms other than loss. There were moments of friction. A staff meeting where someone implied Anna sought to win the family's gratitude for personal gain, and the millionaire corrected the insinuation. Anna refused gifts beyond practicality, and when he offered to pay for training for her to become a certified caregiver, she considered it and then declined politely. She said, "I do what I do because he needs it, not because of what I might get," and her refusal gave him a lesson in dignity. His old friends teased him about his changing interests, and he heard in their voice the old world that measured people by status. At a charity gala, he saw the way Anna's face registered the spectacle and how she stood apart from the glitter without envy. He began to ask himself whether generosity meant giving money or giving time and attention, and his answers shifted. There was a tender scene when Mr. Carlyle, exhausted and unsure, sat on the edge of Ethan's bed and listened to Anna recount a story about her sister's first day of school. It was not a grand scene. It was an intimate transfer of memory that changed him more than any boardroom victory. Word came that a scandal might erupt. A photograph of Anna and Ethan had been taken from a distance and a tabloid sought to spin a narrative. Mr. Carlyle made a decision that surprised everyone who knew him. He called the editor and offered a generous donation under the condition the paper would not publish the photo. The editor was pleased with the arrangement and the story evaporated, but the act felt like an admission. He was willing to spend money to keep the boy's privacy. It made Anna uneasy in an odd way. She did not want charity disguised as protection, and she told him so quietly one night. A former caretaker, fired years ago, had nursed grievances and petty injuries into a narrative of revenge. He had been dismissed for negligence and had brushed past their doorstep with bitterness, waiting for a chance to hurt what he believed had wronged him. This man found an ally in the internet's appetite for scandal and began to weave half-truths about Anna. He spread rumors that Anna had been stealing small items from the house, that she had been lax with Ethan's care, that she had designs that went beyond kindness. Those rumors gained traction among some staff, and Mr. Carlyle felt the old rules of reputation tighten around his decisions. He called an emergency meeting, and in that small room the staff laid out their accusations and clipped sentences. Anna listened without interrupting, and the millionaire watched the scene and felt the old reflex of iron judgment rise in him. Under the pressure, for the first time since he'd met Anna, he tasted fear of being manipulated. He ordered an internal audit, and cameras were checked and logs examined, and the messy realities of human error appeared in documentary form.